The first death. In Spider-Man, we meet Norman Osborn, the owner of Oscorp and the father of Peter Parker's best friend. He's a brilliant scientist, but also a businessman desperately trying to save his company. When the military tests start failing, he decides to use an experimental formula on himself that increases strength and aggression. The experiment works, but it also creates the Green Goblin personality, and that's when the chaos begins. The first victim is Dr. Mendel Strom, an Oscorp scientist. The Green Goblin simply throws the guy out a window.
Back to formula.
With great power, the same movie also gives us one of the most emotional deaths, Uncle Ben's. The film shows Peter becoming arrogant after getting his powers, letting a rock escape purely out of ego after winning a fight and not receiving the money he was promised. Minutes later, during a rock escape, Flint Marko gets startled in the middle of the chaos and accidentally shoots Ben Parker. He dies in Peter's arms in one of the saddest deaths in superhero movie history. This twist involving Flint was only revealed years later in Spider-Man 3. For years, everyone thought Dennis was the real killer, and Dennis meets his end shortly afterward when Peter tries catching him, and the criminal falls out of a building window. Meanwhile, the Green Goblin starts a complete massacre inside Oscorp. He blows up military figures like Captain Curtis, General Slocum, and several soldiers using pumpkin bombs. There's even the famous scene where Norman wipes out almost the entire Oscorp board of executives. Some fall from the balcony in panic, while others simply disappear in the explosion. At the end, the movie delivers another symbolic death. After kidnapping Mary Jane Watson and forcing Peter to choose between saving her or a tram full of children, the Green Goblin enters the final battle, and here, the movie makes it clear Norman has completely lost control. During the fight, he tries attacking Spider-Man from behind using his glider, but Peter senses the danger at the last second and dodges it. Result: Norman gets impaled by the blades of his own machine. It's a quick death, but an extremely heavy one, because Peter literally watches his best friend's father die right in front of him.
Peter, don't tell Harry.
The mechanical arms. In Spider-Man 2, we meet Otto Octavius, a brilliant scientist who develops mechanical arms controlled by artificial intelligence to create a sustainable energy source. Before the accident, Otto seemed like the perfect mentor for Peter, and that's exactly what makes his tragedy so heartbreaking. During the experiment demonstration, Otto presents the project alongside his wife, Rosalie Octavius, who is clearly the most important person in his life. But the reactor loses control and destroys the laboratory. The mechanical arms restrain Otto while everything explodes around him, and Rosalie ends up killed by shattered glass. That scene completely changes the character from that point forward. Afterward, Otto wakes up in the hospital while doctors try removing the mechanical arms attached to his body, but the tentacle's artificial intelligence takes over, leading to one of the scariest scenes in Sam Raimi's entire trilogy. Honestly, it feels like a horror movie. The arms violently attack the doctors inside the operating room. Some get thrown against walls, another gets electrocuted, while several are killed by the tentacles themselves. After officially becoming Dr. Octopus, Otto starts stealing money and equipment to rebuild the experiment. But the ending is what truly turns him into one of Spider-Man's best villains. When Otto realizes the reactor will destroy all of New York, he finally regains control of himself and decides to sacrifice his own life.
I will not die a monster.
Dr. Octopus drags the machine into the river and sinks alongside it to stop the catastrophe. Best friends. And to close out the first trilogy, Spider-Man 3 completely tears apart Peter Parker's life all at once. He's finally being recognized as a hero. His relationship with Mary Jane seems stable, and New York loves Spider-Man. But then three massive problems enter the story: Sandman, the Venom symbiote, and Harry Osborn's revenge. The result? The movie turns into complete chaos. During the final battle, Venom and Sandman kidnap Mary Jane and lure Peter to a construction site. The fight becomes total war filled with explosions, steel beams, giant sand attacks, and Harry Osborn finally helping Peter after discovering the truth about his father's death. But Venom proves to be far more dangerous than expected. In the climax, Peter discovers the symbiote is vulnerable to sound and uses metal pipes to weaken Venom. Eddie Brock separates from the creature for a few seconds, but decides to bond with the symbiote again even after realizing everything is about to explode. Eddie and Venom seemingly die together in the explosion, but the heaviest death comes right afterward. During the fight, Harry Osborn gets impaled by his own glider. after trying to save Peter from Venom. It's a cruel ending for the character. Harry spent 3 movies switching between Peter's best friend, rival, and enemy. And in the end, he finally makes the right choice, only to die moments later. The Lizard. In The Amazing Spider-Man, the main tragedy is still Uncle Ben's death. This time, the movie makes everything feel more grounded. Peter starts using his powers selfishly, gets into an argument with Ben, and storms out of the convenience store angry. Minutes later, Dennis Carradine tries to rob the store and ends up shooting Ben while escaping. The scene is less dramatic than the 2002 version, but that's exactly why it works. Andrew Garfield sells Peter's guilt perfectly there. You can genuinely feel the character breaking inside in that moment. Meanwhile, the story follows Kurt Connors, an Oscorp scientist obsessed with genetic regeneration. The man lost an arm and believes mixing human DNA with reptiles can solve that. Once Connors fully becomes the Lizard, the violence escalates a lot. But the movie's heaviest death isn't a villain's. It's Captain George Stacy's. Gwen's father spends most of the movie distrusting Spider-Man, but eventually decides to help Peter fight the Lizard. During the final battle, Connors attacks Stacy with his claws, and the police captain dies shortly afterward from his injuries. Before dying, he makes Peter promise to keep Gwen away from that dangerous life.
Leave Gwen out of it.
And of course, Peter fails to keep that promise.
No, please.
The girlfriend. At the beginning of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, we see Richard Parker trying to destroy dangerous Oscorp research. To stop the experiments from falling into the wrong hands, he poisons dozens of genetically altered spiders. But then everything spirals out of control. A hijacker invades the cockpit, the pilot dies off-screen, and Mary Parker gets shot during the struggle. Richard reacts by smashing a plane window, sucking the criminal out of the aircraft. But it doesn't help much because the plane crashes shortly afterward, killing Richard too. The movie's main tragedy revolves around Max Dillon. He's a completely ignored Oscorp employee until he suffers a bizarre accident involving electric eels. Max seemingly dies from electrocution inside the tank, while several eels explode around him. But he returns as Electro. After causing destruction in Times Square, he's locked inside Ravencroft Institute. But once Harry Osborn frees him, Electro kills the guards and Dr. Ashley Kafka by drowning him in a water tank. In the climax at the power plant, Peter and Gwen manage to overload Electro using the city's own electricity. The villain gets disintegrated in the explosion, but nothing hits harder than Gwen Stacy's death. After Harry Osborn becomes the Green Goblin using Peter's blood, he kidnaps Gwen and takes her to the clock tower. During the fight, one of the gears breaks, Gwen slips and falls. Peter tries saving her with his web at the last second, but it's too late. His web reaches her body, but the impact still happens, and she dies. And Peter's crying afterward is what makes everything even worse, because that's the moment he realizes he lost the most important person in his life.
No, please.
Alien technology. In Spider-Man: Homecoming, the tone changes a lot compared to the previous movies. Here, Peter Parker is already part of the MCU after the events of Captain America, Civil War, and desperately tries proving he deserves to become an Avenger. The main thread of the story is Adrian Toomes, the Vulture, a man who started out as an ordinary worker cleaning up debris from the alien invasion of New York. The movie's only death happens inside the Vulture's own crew. Jackson Bryce, who uses one version of the Shocker suit, starts arguing with Toomes after a mission goes wrong, but Adrian tries scaring him with an alien weapon, and literally disintegrates Bryce by accident.
I thought this was the anti-gravity gun.
What? No, that's that one.
Deadly illusion. In Spider-Man: Far From Home, while Peter tries enjoying a normal vacation around Europe and finally asking MJ out, Quentin Beck appears, the supposed hero from another dimension known as Mysterio. And that's when the movie starts showing just how dangerously manipulative Mysterio really is. Even before the main attacks, he's already shutting down older illusions like Cyclone, and then creating giant monsters made of sand, water, and fire just to make himself look like a savior. But his death finally comes during the climax. After manipulating the entire world and nearly killing Peter, Mysterio loses control of the drones during the final battle. Even injured, he still tries tricking Peter one last time using holograms, but Peter's spider sense finally works properly, allowing him to see through the illusion. In the middle of the chaos, a Stark drone accidentally fires at Beck, leaving the villain bleeding on the floor until he dies. And the most ironic part is that even after dying, Mysterio still manages to ruin Peter's life, because seconds earlier he records a fake video manipulating everything to frame Spider-Man as the villain and reveal Peter's identity to the entire world.
Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker. What the?
Chaotic multiverse. In Spider-Man: No Way Home, Peter stops being the friendly neighborhood hero and basically becomes the most hunted person on the planet. And while trying to fix that, he asks Doctor Strange for help. Terrible idea, because the spell goes wrong and starts pulling people from other universes who know Spider-Man's identity. But the real nightmare begins once the Green Goblin takes control of Norman Osborn again. The guy turns the place into a complete war zone. Using his classic pumpkin bombs, he blows up several police officers surrounding the building, while Peter tries protecting the villains brought from the multiverse. But the death that emotionally destroys Peter is Aunt May's. During the fight inside the building, the Goblin hits her with the glider in a brutal attack. Even injured, May still finds the strength to talk to Peter, while he stands there in shock, trying to process what happened. And that's when she delivers the iconic line,
You have power, and with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
That scene completely changes the tone of the movie. Up until that moment, No Way Home still had plenty of humor and nostalgic moments. Afterward, it basically becomes a story about grief and guilt. And in the end, the most interesting part is that several classic deaths are symbolically undone. Norman gets cured, Electro loses his powers, and Dr. Octopus regains consciousness before returning to his universe. The variants. Moving on to the animated movies, we have Spider-Man: Into the Spider-Verse. Vanessa Fisk and her son Richard die in a car accident after leaving Wilson Fisk because of his obsession with crime. Kingpin never gets over it and spends the entire movie trying to open dimensional portals to bring alternate versions of his family back. The film also shows several important deaths through quick flashbacks. The classic Uncle Ben still exists in practically every universe.
With great power comes
Don't
great...
you dare finish that sentence.
You know, with great ability comes great accountability.
That's not even how the saying goes,
Man, I do
Dad.
like-
In Miles Morales' reality, he had already been killed years earlier by a criminal. Meanwhile, in Peter B. Parker's universe, even Aunt May had already died before the main events.
The barn, I broke my back, a drone flew into my face. I buried Aunt May, my wife and I.
At the same time, Gwen Stacy carries the trauma of Peter Parker's death from her universe. Miles' origin story also happens in a tragic way. After getting bitten by a radioactive spider brought from another dimension, Miles accidentally crushes it. It looks like a quick visual joke, but technically it's the death that creates a new Spider-Man. When Kingpin activates the Super Collider, the Green Goblin tries killing the main Peter Parker by throwing him into the dimensional portal. But everything explodes in the process, and Norman ends up getting crushed by the machine itself. Right afterward, Fisk brutally murders that universe's Peter Parker right in front of Miles. That scene hits hard because Peter was trying to protect the kid until his very last second alive. But the most traumatic death, one that's practically a canon event for Miles, is his uncle Aaron Davison. During the chase, the Prowler grabs Miles, ready to attack and end everything. But Miles removes his mask and Aaron instantly freezes. He realizes he was about to kill his own nephew and immediately gives up. But Kingpin sees everything and interprets it as betrayal. Without hesitating, Fisk shoots Aaron in the back. Before dying, Aaron tells Miles to follow his own path, and that's the moment Miles truly starts becoming Spider-Man.
Just keep going. Just keep going.
And during the climax, Dr. Olivia Octavius tries stopping the heroes using trucks and debris flying through the collider, but one of those trucks ends up crushing her during the fight.
All right, never mind. Let's end this thing.
Dead universes. In Spider-Man: Across the Spider-Verse, the multiverse concept becomes far darker than in the first movie. Here, the story reveals that every Spider-Man universe follows certain canon events, tragedies that apparently need to happen for reality to continue existing. One of the first deaths shown through flashbacks involves Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099. Before becoming the leader of the Spider Society, he had already lost his own family in another reality. The movie shows an alternate version of Miguel being killed by criminals while trying to protect his universe. Afterward, the main Miguel decides to take that variant's place, so he can live alongside his daughter Gabriella. But reality literally starts collapsing because of it, and the entire universe gets erased. The movie also makes it clear that certain deaths repeat themselves across almost every Spider-Man universe. During the Spider Society explanations, we see multiple dead versions of Uncle Ben, Peter Parker, and Captain George Stacy. It's almost like the story is saying tragedy is part of Spider-Man's DNA. Kinda cruel, but it perfectly matches Spider-Man's history in the comics. At the end, we also discover that the alternate Earth 42 universe basically turned into a crime-controlled world after the radioactive spider ended up in the wrong universe and never bit a Peter Parker. In that reality, Captain Jefferson Morales had already died before the movie's main events, something revealed through a mural spread across the city. And that creates a really heavy feeling for the cliffhanger ending, because it shows a world without Spider-Man that was completely destroyed because of it. So now the question is, will the next movie have even more traumatic deaths? For now, we still don't know, but check out our video where we show every single time Spider-Man's identity was revealed. Click and watch. I'll see you there.